on an Anglophone continent. This comes with an entire story and a distinct culture that we will always stand for.
But I do believe that Canada is the best country on earth, and there's nowhere that I or the vast majority of our 41 million strong family would rather be. And that's why I gathered us all here today, the federal government, provinces and territories alike, working with businesses, labor, and stand up for Canada. Thank you all for being here. I thank the premiers for being here especially, and I'm happy now to turn it over to the head of the Council of the Federation, Doug Ford. Doug.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you, Prime Minister, the ministers as well, Minister LeBlanc, Mr. Jolie, and Ambassador Hillman, and all the premiers. This is truly a Team Canada approach that we're taking. And I just can't emphasize it enough about staying united as Canadians, standing up against these tariffs. Things are going to change in a week when the inauguration happens of President Trump, and if he moves forward with these tariffs. There's never been a time that's more important for Canadians to be united, to stand up, and making sure that our voice is heard. And the retaliatory tariffs need to be hard. We have to send a message when someone comes up and tries to destroy our economy. It will be devastating for Canadians. And that's why it's so important. It is so important that our federal government, our provinces, we support the hard-working frontline people that may be affected by the tariffs. But I can assure, I'm speaking for Ontario, I can assure the people of Ontario that we will be there for them. We'll be there to support them. And I'm pretty sure what I heard is everyone feels the same, no matter the territories or the federal government or the provinces. And I'm just so proud of everyone today. This is an opportunity for Canadians to stand up and be proud. Even when it comes down to going into your local retailer, look at the back of the label. If it doesn't say Made in Canada, pick the can beside it that does say Made in Canada. And that goes to our retailers, a message to all our retailers, all the grocery retailers, other retailers. Start onshoring goods to Canada. Start looking at Made in Canada. If we get hit by a tariff and our costs go up, I'd rather pay a few more cents to go to a Canadian supplier, someone that's producing right here in Canada. If you remember back in the pandemic, when President Trump cut us off on the N35 masks, everyone remembers that? We went and said enough is enough, and we brought 3M with the cooperation with the federal government. We onboarded them in Ontario that we can serve the entire country. We should never be reliant on anyone. We're the greatest country in the world. We're an economic powerhouse. There's nothing that we cannot build collectively across our great country. So I just want to thank everyone. I want to thank the people of Canada for standing with us, and we will never, ever give up. We're Canadians, we're proud Canadians, and Canada is not for sale. Thank you.
We'll now begin the question period. 30 minutes of questions, one question, one follow-up. First question.
Bonjour, Fanny Olivier de Radio-Canada.
Fanny Olivier, Radio-Canada. My first question is for you, Mr. Trudeau. I'd like to know whether you're prepared to act on the price of oil to deter Donald Trump, even if it requires you to go against what specific provinces want, like Saskatchewan and Alberta. Well, first of all, as we said, nothing's off the table. We had a great discussion around the table today with people passionately representing all corners of this country. And this is what we've agreed on, really, is that we have to respond to the challenge we're facing, and we also have to make sure that the burden is shared across the country. We can't punish just one region because the tariffs have more impact on that region. We have to be fair, but we also know that we have to have an unequivocal response. Canadians want, and we all want around the table, to respond in a firm way. If the American administration moves forward with the tariffs. It's not certain, but it's quite probable they will. But it's not for certain, and until they've done that, we can't really decide what we will do.
We had an excellent conversation today from around the table with passionate Canadians who are proud to represent very different regions of the country, but who are all united on one thing, which is we will stand up for Canada. We will protect Canadians. We will make sure that we are there to show what this country is made of. At the same time, we've also agreed that no one region of the country should disproportionately bear the burden of standing up for all other Canadians. We have made it very clear that everything is on the table as potential responses, but we've also been very, very clear that it has to be fair across the country. If the American administration moves forward with its plans on tariffs, it will first and foremost hurt American citizens and American consumers, but it'll also hurt Canadians. And Canadians need to stand together to make sure we're there for each other, particularly those who may be carrying a heavier load than others because of what the American administration might do.
Et pour vous, Monsieur Legault, vous avez dit ce matin que toutes les
And for you, Mr.
riposte
Legault,
sont
you
sur la
said
table.
that all countermeasures are on the table. This seems to contradict to what Christina Frechette, your industry minister, said. So I'd like to be clear on whether you're open to increasing the price of hydro for Americans with export tariffs, for example. Answer, well, the first thing I would just say, and the Prime Minister just said this, we all agree the first choice or the best choice is to avoid tariffs. We won't make any announcement until the tariffs have been imposed by the Trump administration. Now, if Mr. Trump does implement tariffs, nothing's off the table, including energy, hydro. That's all possible targets. There are several ways of taking retaliatory measures. We're not here this afternoon to tell you what we'll do. We've talked about what we'll do, about the different measures we're prepared to take, but what we've agreed today is that nothing's off the table. All is possible.
Trudeau, Mackenzie Ray with the Global News. Do you regret not resigning sooner to allow your predecessor the opportunity to be able to deal with the situation with the Americans sooner? And for the premiers as well, Ms. Smith, I don't know if you're here, but Mr. Moe, do you think Mr. Trudeau's lame duck status makes Canada's ability to negotiate with the Americans more difficult?
The experience Canada had in renegotiating NAFTA in the first Trump administration demonstrated that when we stand together united, promoting Canada's interests, we can do very well, even against a larger trading partner. And that is the focus we have right now. Yes, the Liberal Party is having discussions about its next leader. But right now, our entire focus, and the ministers with me, and indeed all the premiers, is on making sure that we're protecting Canadians every step of the way. That's the job I was elected to do back in 2021, and that's the job I will continue to do until the day at which I am no longer doing it. But right now, my entire focus is on standing up for Canada and protecting Canadians. Should be good.
Saskatchewan's been silenced again. Make a comment with respect to, at times, we are going to have differences in policy, whether that be at the subnational level between premiers up here, whether it be through from different provinces with the federal government. And I've never made any secret with respect to where we have differed on policy with the federal Liberal government and the Prime Minister at times, and been very open with Saskatchewan's position on those policies. Maybe that's why I probably could exclude myself today from entering the Liberal leadership race over the course of the next while. That, and I'm not bilingual. But more broadly, and I would say, thank you to Premier Ford and to the Prime Minister for coming together here today. to have a very different discussion about those policies where we might not agree, but to have a discussion on how we move forward on what is a very significant challenge, not only to the folks that live in Saskatchewan, but to all Canadians. And there are points in this where, we may have disagreements, but Canadians can be thankful that their 13 premiers, the Prime Minister, and a few federal ministers are coming together, not only to hash out and work through what those differences might be, but to understand where we can come together and what the process is over the next number of days and then up to the inauguration, and what our options might be post that inauguration period of time. This is our largest ally that we are talking about, and it's our largest trading partner. It's our most significant trading partner. That's not to say that we haven't had trade tariff disputes with the U.S. or other countries previously. And there is we've been through this before, maybe not as large and broad as what is being talked about now, but we have been through this before. And there is a process to the work that we must do. And I would say that today, that process involves each of us, whether we be a subnational leader or a part of the federal government today or months ahead, whoever that might be, is to ensure that North Americans are aware of the impact that these U.S. tariffs will have on all North Americans, in particular on Americans, and to ensure that everyone is aware, in particular those in the sphere of policy and decision makers in the U.S. are aware of the advantages that we have with the integration of the North American economy and the threat that any type of tariffs, whether they be north or south of the border, bring to our energy security, our food security, the manufacturing security that we have. It's provided, and that value is added on both sides of the border, and we need to double down on our efforts in engaging on those fronts. There's agreement at this table on all of those points, and so we may have policy disagreements from time to time, but there's things that we agree on, and there's times when we do have to come together to represent what is in the best interest of all Canadians, and we in Saskatchewan, we continue to be Canadians.
Mr. Trudeau, do you plan on running in the next election? And if you don't, what are you going to do when you're not Prime Minister anymore?
First of all, I want to thank Scott for that answer. It's rare I get such support. No, I do have to say that particularly those who've been around. Sorry, I'm endangering your political fortunes by thanking you publicly. I do want to say that Scott and Doug and a number of the folks who've been around a while have been extraordinarily invaluable in these conversations, in this Team Canada approach. There's always a lot of politics going on around this country, but to know when to step up in the Canadian national interest and to know that that's what Canadians want to see is really is to the credit of everyone around this table. In terms of my own decisions, I will not be running in the upcoming election. As to what I might be doing later, I honestly haven't had much time to think about that at all. I am entirely focused on doing the job that Canadians elected me to do in an extraordinarily pivotal time right now. The U.S. inauguration and the weeks that follow are something that is of deep, deep importance to Canadians, and we are entirely focused on that as a team.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Next question.
Hi, Kat Tunney from CBC. A question for Premier Ford as chair. Just looking for a vibe check. Do you agree? How much do you agree or disagree with the government's plan to address the tariffs? And should we read into the fact that Premier Smith is not here as a sign that you're not all on the same page?
Well, first of all, I think we're united in a message. If we had our choice, we'd have no tariffs. I've been out there promoting two great countries. We'd be the strongest country, the richest country, the safest country in the entire world. I believe in shipping, in our case, more great nickel, world-class nickel down there. I believe that we should be sending more energy, more electricity. Sorry, but when you have someone that's attacking our country, trying to take livelihoods off people, I'm going to fight like you've never seen before. So that's what I believe in. Sorry, I'm choking away here. Go ahead.
Well, if there are any dissenting views, I'm happy to or interested in hearing those as well. My next question is for, or did you want to continue?
I will point out that Danielle did join us for the conversation and contributed significantly. She was unable to make it for the press conference. David Eby is here as well. But no, there will always be robust discussions around this table. Everyone has a job that is defending the interests of their own constituents, their own industry. as standing up for the national interest, but being able to come together on a consensus, that has largely been supported, as you saw from the KK. This is a good thing. OK. Évidemment, on a toujours des discussions robustes. Il y a des différentes parties du pays qui sont représentées. Les gens sont là pour lutter pour leur paroisse, pour leurs intérêts. Mais
people are there to fight for their own interests, but they're also concerned by the interests of Canadians as a whole. And this is why we have been able to come to agreement around the table on how we've been able to get broad support for our press release.
Or whatever. Isn't this great that we have three political parties sitting down and we have a robust conversation? We may agree or disagree, but we're coming out united. I can tell you, spending a lot of time in the U.S., you would never see a group of Democrats and Republicans sitting here collaboratively. I promise you one thing, President Trump's office, a whole bunch of Democrats and Republicans saying, how can we attack Canada? It's not happening. We have the greatest country. We have the greatest elected officials, the greatest democracy in the world, that we can sit here from one extreme to the other extreme to in the middle. And I have always said, I don't care about political stripes. I don't care if you're from the orange party, the blue party, or the red party. We're going to be united. We're Canadian. We're going to get this done.
As a follow-up to the Prime Minister, is Ottawa considering any supports for industries and businesses that might get caught up in a tariff dispute?
Yes, absolutely. We know that in any response we give, some industries or some sectors might be more exposed or more affected than others. And we've made the commitment to do everything we can. And I know everyone around the table has agreed too, that if their region is less impacted, they'll do what they can to help out regions that are more impacted. This is not an attack on, or this is not a potential a challenge for one particular segment of our economy, or one particular region of this country. This is an attack or an approach that endangers all Canadians and all of Canada. And on this one, we're all standing united in demonstrating that Canada speaks with a clear voice to defend the interests of Canadians.
Thank you. Next question.
Émilie Bergeron, La Presse canadienne. Monsieur Trudeau, vous avez
Mr.
parlé
Trudeau, you talked about the burden of possible retaliatory tariffs, and you've said it has to be shared. So we've heard different positions from the various premiers on energy this morning. How has consensus evolved since the start of the meeting? And also, could we hear you in English for our Anglophone colleagues afterwards? Well, first of all, consensus is based on the fact that we still hope that there won't be any tariffs, and that we'll be able to work on how we can deepen our relationship in the future, and how we can build a united and strong North America against international actors who are becoming increasingly problematic, strengthening North America. That's our shared desire across the country. And then we talked about the various steps that we could take to retaliate. We don't know yet what the tariffs Mr. Trump will be imposed, so we can't decide today what we do in retaliation. But in terms of the initial steps we're prepared to take, we all agree on what should be done.
I'm good. Thank you.
Mr. Trudeau, also, another question for you. And now, how would you use what legal tools do you have, and what do you intend to do in terms of tariffs on energy? Well, I would like to point out once again that we hope there won't be any tariffs on Canada. We are the best partner and friend and ally of the U.S. We should be working together to create a win-win situation for both our countries. It's logical and a responsible thing to do. But it all depends on what the new administration decides to do. We will react accordingly. Well, we haven't yet decided what our specific retaliation will be because we don't know what the American administration intends to do yet. But we've all agreed on the principles and the principle of making sure that there's no one industry or one region of the country that has to pay a higher burden than any other region. This is something we all agree on. Thank you. Next question.
Prime Minister and Premier Ford. Following today's meeting, was there an establishment of who speaks for Team Canada? Do all the premiers and ministers defer to one point person, or is everyone free to speak to their American counterparts themselves?
We have encouraged, and from the very beginning, encouraged all premiers, all Canadian business owners, all Canadians with any sort of interaction with the United States to engage on this issue and to speak up for the benefits of free and open trade between our two countries, the win-win, the amount of jobs that directly result from in the United States from things we do in Canada and vice versa. It is to be expected that everyone weighs in. It's actually one of the strengths of Canada that we have people from different political parties, different regions, different industries coming down with a similar message, which is we should be working together to create more prosperity on both sides of the border. Obviously, everyone tries to coordinate through our embassy in Washington to make sure that we're getting full information on the conversations that are being had to be able to be as strategic as possible. But it is actually more impactful when Americans see Canadians speaking from multiple perspectives, multiple voices, but standing up for Canada in the same way. That's the heart of Team Canada, and that's why we have such a strong approach on this.
As for the Yukon Premier, earlier today you said you wanted a blueprint about whose roles, who does what, who's in charge of what. Following today's meeting, do you have sense of that, of what roles are supposed to be done by everybody?
Yeah, I think that actually, yeah, just as that question came up and thinking about what was laid out today, I think everybody, look, I'll use a hockey analogy. I think when you talk about Team Canada, everybody can score goals in different ways. I think the key is that everybody is actually has a blueprint about what we are going to message. I think there was good strategy laid out, and I feel very good. Part of the goal here was to wake up tomorrow and understand what the role was as a premier, how we interact, how our levels of government will work together to make sure that we align, and as things become elevated, if they do, depending on what happens on the 20th, we have a clear understanding of how we'll work together and understand how each person's tools they put on the table can interact or can affect other jurisdictions, but at the same time, how they can be most effective. So I'm very happy with what I heard today.
Prime Minister Trudeau, Alberta didn't sign the joint press release. I'd like to know why. And Ms. Smith has also publicly said that the federal government doesn't have the authority to block oil exports to the U.S. Do you have jurisdiction as Prime Minister to do that? The last thing we want to do is to undertake a turf war. We're all united that we have to act in a robust way. What will the answer be? Well, we'll talk about that. We don't yet know what the American administration will do or won't do. But there's a broad consensus around the table on this. In terms of the press release, you'd have to ask that question of Ms. Smith herself. Ask her why she decided not to sign the press release. We all signed on to it. I don't know why she failed to sign on to it.
The clear consensus around the table is that we need to respond in measured but robust ways to the American actions, whatever they are. We can't know definitively what our response will be or can't announce what our response will be until we know definitively what the Americans are going to decide to do. We continue to hope that they will realize that tariffs on goods coming into the United States from Canada is just an extra tax on consumers in the United States. It's going to raise prices for consumers in the United States. That's not something that we want. That's not something that I think American citizens and consumers want. So we are united in wanting to move forward to make sure that these tariffs don't actually happen. In regards to why Alberta hasn't signed on the joint communique between Canada and the Council of the Federation, you'll have to ask the Premier about that directly.
En suivi, ma question s'adresse au Premier ministre Legault.
My question is now for Premier Legault. Why did you decide to sign the press release? And should we understand that if the Prime Minister of Canada asked you to do it for national unity, you would agree to cut hydro aluminum exports to the U.S.? Yes. Is it working? Okay, yes. Well, the first thing that's clearly stated in the press release is that our first choice, or what we really want, is no tariffs. We don't know what's going to happen next week or what's going to happen in the coming weeks, for that matter, either. Our priority, our first choice, is to do everything in our power to avoid tariffs. Now, if tariffs are imposed, where we're going to have to see, are they tariffs on all products? Are they tariffs on specific products? And then nothing's off the table. We have to decide what we do. What American products do we impose tariffs on? It's too early to answer that question, I think, as to what we will do. We have to, first of all, see what Mr. Trump does, and then we can make a decision amongst us. But what I'm saying is that nothing's off the table.
If the idea in talking about this is to get Trump to back down and to have this not happen, why not come out with a dollar for dollar proposal right now publicly to show the Americans that we're serious and pressure them to back down on this?
First of all, as we said, everything is on the table, and I support the principle of a proportional dollar-for-dollar response. That is not the question. The question that we ask ourselves, first and foremost, is if the new administration chooses to bring in tariffs, what is it that we can do that will result in the lifting of those tariffs as quickly as possible? That is first and foremost. And what we're doing right now, what we have been doing for weeks, is engaging with the American administration to highlight the investments we're making in our shared border, to respond to concerns that they've expressed. We've laid out a number of different things that matter to them. We know that the last thing the new administration wants to do is raise prices on American consumers for all sorts of goods. But that will be the consequence of these tariffs if they come in. So we are both trying to prevent them from coming in, and if they do come in, we will try to get them lifted as quickly as possible. And like I said, we will use any and all tools necessary as a country to stand up for Canadians.
And I understand Danielle Smith has posted online her sort of reaction to this and why she didn't sign the communique, saying she can't support what's going on today because the idea is still being floated about putting an export tariff on our oil and gas. So what's your reaction to that? Why were you unable to bring her on board with this?
Doug, you want that?
Well, that's what's unique about our group. Everyone has their interest at heart, and I respect Premier Smith. I respect that she's concerned about protecting her energy, and that's her choice. That is her choice. But I have a little different theory. I have a different theory that protect your jurisdiction, but country comes first. Canada's a priority. And I don't believe in jeopardizing one sector or another. Premier Smith's oil is Ontario's auto sector, right? So again, we all have different views, and we can respect each other's views. But at the end of the day, when the tariffs come, it's going to affect Albertans. It's going to affect people from BC and Saskatchewan and Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, all the way down the road. No one's exempt from that. And all I believe in, if it comes to that, let's have the tools in our toolbox to react, to send a strong message. But it's not going to be all of a sudden one province or one territory is exempt on this. When Donald Trump comes at us, He's not going to say, well, let's not worry about Ontario. They're good people, or Alberta. He's coming full tilt at Canadians as a whole. And that's one thing we have to understand. We need to be united. You know, Donald Trump is a brilliant negotiator. That's what he's done his whole life. That's exactly what he's done. And he's sitting there with a big smile on his face thinking, wow, I'm going to divide and conquer. Remember one thing, united we stand, divided we fall. We need to be united.
Can I jump in there?
Just a sec. Well, I'll pass over to you in a sec. I just want to point out something in what Doug Ford just said. Doug, the incoming American president specifically and has explicitly targeted one industry in Canada, one sector of the economy, and it's not the Alberta oil industry. It's the Ontario auto sector. It's an auto pact that has been incredibly successful for 50 years in building cars on both sides of the border that benefits both Canadians and Americans. That's the target. But you don't hear Doug saying, oh, no matter what, we got to protect the auto. Yes, he does say that, but it's not at the expense of everything else. He's just pointed out that he's a Canadian first, as much as he's passionate about Ontario. And I think that's something that we all share across this table, of saying, you know what, the interest of this country means we're going to have to look at everything we can, and we'll make sure that it's fair across the country, but nothing can be off the table if the U.S. continues to choose to move forward with these punishing tariffs on both Canadians and Americans. Sorry, Wap, didn't mean to.
Yeah, no, thanks for convening the meeting today, Prime Minister. And Doug Ford, you're doing a heck of a job as the chair of the premiers this year. You're communicating in a straightforward, direct, straight up kind of way that we need right now. And great hat. I hope they make that in an orange as well. Maybe able to wear that in the prairies.
I'll pass on the red one.
Yeah. I wasn't going to make the red hat joke, but Prime Minister, you made it. What I did want to say is that there is unity amongst the premiers of the provinces, the territories, the federal government. And where we have unity is that we're going to stand up for your jobs and we're going to make your life more affordable. We want to keep standing up for our economy. And we're also united on the fact that Trump's tariff tax is going to make life more expensive in the United States of America for the average American person. So I hope that Canadians look at the meeting today and feel a lot of pride. I hope that there's Canadian pride in the fact that you can have Liberals and Conservatives and New Democrats and nonpartisan leaders coming together to stand up for your jobs and for your way of life. And I hope that that sense of pride that we have a Canada with a functioning political discourse like that spills out into the broader society, so that when you go to the store, that Canadian pride leads you to buy that made in Canada product. That when you make your big decisions, that you choose to make investments here. We need a national economic strategy that builds on the pride of the worker who builds things and makes things in this country, so that our kids and our grandkids are going to have a much more prosperous, even more prosperous Canada than we have today. And I'd hope that your Canadian pride also filters into your decisions about where to take your vacations this summer. And to, spend some more dollars here at home. Manitoba is beautiful. In the summertime, you have an open invitation, and now we're all going to trip over each other,
Minister wants us in Shediac.
inviting everybody to the respective regions. Winnipeg Jets may be on a playoff run.
Okay, come on, Wap.
But the point is, Canadian pride is something that we can really lean on right now. And there are few things that unite Canadians more, for better and for worse, than our neighbor to the south. And so right now, as you see leaders coming together, I think it's a great moment for Canadians to come together as well.
Well said.
Thank you very much, Premier. This will be the last question.
A question for the Prime Minister. You're at the end of your term, 2 months left. Do you think that this transition undermines Canada's position? Quite the opposite. I think the fact that I've been able to put aside partisan politics to focus on the interests and the welfare of Canadians, and the fact that I, leaving behind me a united and stronger Canada ready to confront all challenges, well, it's an opportunity for me to work with my colleagues without worrying about partisan politics. It allows me to take responsibility for this major issue and our approach to our friends to the south. It's a great opportunity for me in terms of health. 1.5 fewer doctors. People are worried about being able to find a doctor. Will you keep this money in the network for the future? Well, what's important to say or to point out is that in health, since I've been Premier, we've increased health spending by 50%. There's been a major increase annually, including this year, in fact, 2024, 2025. And that comes to an end on 31st of March this year. There's no question of reducing that budget, but we're asking our networks to respect the budget.
Merci tout le monde.